Welcome everybody. Thanks for recording. That catches me every time. Just starting off, want to thank everybody for taking the time and providing your expertise and information that you have on this subject to our overall effort. I'm Chris Colligan. I'm the Public Works Project Manager for the Water Quality Master Planning effort. And we're working with our partners at the Town of Jackson, Protect Our Waters, JH, and Teton Conservation District to complete a 20-year vision master plan for the future of water quality in our community. And we've been working for about a year now with Tri-Hydro and Flitner Strategies, our consultants in this effort. To this point, we've been evaluating the data, collecting what available data there is out there, developing vulnerability and sensitivity models to give us a better understanding of the conditions here locally. And at this step, we're ready to start the stakeholder involvement process and develop our recommendations moving forward. And we want to emphasize this is a stakeholder-driven process. And so can't thank you enough for your involvement. It's meant to be very transparent. And if you have any questions for us, at the project team, at the county, or the consultants, we are available to answer any questions and take your feedback throughout the process. There will be a lot of opportunities beyond today. We will have public meetings and eventually end up in front of the Board of County Commissioners with a final plan who will be the ultimate decision maker. So thanks for being here. Thanks for providing us your feedback, and thanks for participating in it through this process. So back to Sarah and Tri-Hydro is going to go through introductions and talk through this process.
Great, thanks, Chris. I want to recognize the other partners who have been working on the project team with Chris in the county. They're the Town of Jackson. You're all going to introduce yourselves, so I'll let them make individual introductions, but Town of Jackson, Conservation District, and Protect Our Waters, JH. Every other week, or if not every week, they've been meeting for the last year or so. And now is the really fun part for us, which is engaging with you to help us make sense of the data and some of the substance that you'll hear from Travis and his team at Tri-Hydro. First, I'd like to invite all of you, though many of you know each other, and some of you, at least probably about half of you, have been in these meetings all week. So I challenge you to, pick a new word, because how this is going to go, I'm going to cue you up name by name, and please just introduce yourself by name and affiliation. Please also type that into chat so that we have it. And then 1 or 2 words for really desired outcome for today, or reason that you are really interested in this stakeholder group. And please give your full attention to, it's a silly instruction in some ways, but we're trying to give you an opportunity to connect with the purpose. And this is important work and your time is valuable. So we want to just give you an opportunity to really be intentional about that. Kay, I'm going to pick on you to start because you so far have the prettiest background.
Oh, great. Kay Modi. I'm on the board of Protect Our Waters Jackson Hole. I joined last spring, so most people may not have met me in that capacity. My background is chemical engineering, but I also have advanced studies in geology and water management. So I guess my interest is looking at the framework that this group is using, and also just, perhaps lend some experience in some stormwater management practices and regulations that are used for restoration.
Thanks, Kay. Tanya. And then Scott Pearson. Tanya, go ahead.
All right, Tanya Anderson, Town of Jackson Ecosystem Stewardship Administrator. I'm just going to leave it there today.
Fourth one. Sustainability was your word yesterday or the day before. Scott? And then Katie.
Scott Pearson, just a concerned person at this point in time, being fairly retired. You want a word.
Why does this matter to you, Scott? You've been involved in a long time.
Clean water is critical, and we are at the headwaters.
Yeah. Thanks, Scott. Katie, and then Christy. We can't hear you. We'll come right back to you. Christy, will you take it, please?
Sure. I'm Christy Byers. I'm the new public engagement specialist for Teton County.
And Katie, just use your voice when you have sound. Matt, I think, do I remember that right? Matt Dukart? No.
Yeah, it's Mac. Hi there. Yeah, just joining as a concerned citizen. I also work in the waterworks with Jorgensen Engineering. Thanks.
Welcome, Matt. Thanks. Ida or Ada? Then Lisa, please. Ada, you're on mute.
It's actually Aida.
Aida, I know. Yes,
Yes.
I just recognized you when the camera came on. Hi, Aida.
Hi, and I apologize. This is the only one this week I've been on, so this will all be new for me this week. And I'm recently retired, December 31st, so that's kind of why I've been behind the eight ball a little bit on this. I'm recently retired with USGS. And so I was a leader of the field station here in Jackson, and I work mainly with aquatic toxicology and restoration. And, but I'm not, even though I'm going to be emeritus for USGS, I'm not part of this group representing USGS. I also am on the Teton County Board of Health. So I've got interest in there. And then, of course, I think I first got interested as a concerned citizen. And I think I was nominated to be on this stakeholder
Yes,
group.
that's correct. Yeah.
But
And thanks. You haven't missed anything, and all these meetings are open, but you are on this stakeholder group, and the ones who've been on the other ones, just to make myself clear, are mostly the project, the town and county and so forth. But you are all welcome to all of them, and we publish the schedules on the website. Thanks, Aida. Lisa, and then Derek, and then Sinclair, and we'll try to move through this fairly quickly because we have a lot of good science to go over.
Hi, I'm Lisa Smith from St. John's Health. I'm the sustainability coordinator. And one of my interests with this group is snow storage. And it's a real issue with the hospital right now, and it is being carted away. So that was my reason for joining the group.
Great, thanks, Lisa. Derek, then Sinclair.
Hello, Derek Ellis with the Jacksonville Land Trust, Director of Stewardship. Excited to be part of the group to kind of lend our conservation easement perspective, and really a big fan of collaborative conservation. So thank you for organizing this.
Great, thanks, Derek. Sinclair, then David.
Hi, I'm Sandy Buckstaff, although Sinclair Buckstaff Jr. is the whole tag. I was the first on-staff town engineer for the town of Jackson, starting in 1993 and served through 2000. Today, I'm the chairman of the board of the Flat Creek Watershed Improvement District, so I still have an interest in storm drainage. I'm the author of the Town of Jackson Surface Water Drainage Infrastructure Master Plan that was created in 2001. And I would say that my impetus for being a participant here is that I would like to see the ideas that I pushed in the late 1990s and ruffled a lot of feathers in the community. I would like to see them 25 years later actually come to fruition.
Great. Thanks, Sandy. I didn't recognize the Sinclair bit. Katie, are you guys, are you not quite? Okay. Ron, please. Ron and then Alex. And as brief as you can, though, we're so delighted you're here. There's a lot of us and I want to make sure you have time to hear the presentation. Hi, Ron.
Hi, I am Ron Stegg. I oversee Wyoming DEQ's TMDL and Water Quality Assessment Program, and very interested in any local solutions we can come up with for addressing water quality issues.
Thanks for giving us time today. Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex Jeffers, now Point Source Program Coordinator for Wyoming DEQ. So I manage our Section 319 and 205J Clean Water Act grants. And so same as Ron, here to hear what you guys are doing and what we can do to help for water quality.
Great, thank you. Kelsey, then Amy, then Kristen Waters, please.
Rolling with the DEQ staff. I'm in the Water Quality Division and also conducted some master's work here in Teton County.
Great, thanks. Amy?
Hi, everyone. Amy King at Legacy Works, and I'm here to learn and to support. That's all.
Welcome. Kristen, then Megan, then Carlin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Waters, and I work for Teton County as the Public Information Specialist / Officer.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Megan Quinn. I'm the Executive Director for Protect Our Water Jackson Hole. And thank you all for joining us on this. I'm here because I believe that water is our most precious resource and we need to leave this clean for future generations. Thanks again.
Carlin, then Sawyer, then Leslie.
Carlin Gerard, Executive Director, Teton Conservation District. I think that in a community where residential impacts are one of our primary concerns, stormwater is a real issue that needs to be addressed all the
time. Sawyer, then Leslie. And Katie, if you guys can't get audio, just type into chat and we're super glad to see you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sawyer Finley. I'm with Trout Unlimited. I'm a new hire as the Snake River Headwaters Project Manager. This is my first meeting and I'm just here to learn and support as well.
Welcome, Sawyer. Hi, Leslie.
Hi. Leslie Steen with Trout Unlimited. I'm here to kind of represent the stream restoration side of things, if that is helpful to the conversation.
Wonderful. Jess, then Florin, then Jason.
Hey all, my name is Jess. Excuse me. I'm with Pause, and you could either say unfortunately or fortunately. My name is usually synonymous with dog poop, so yay for that. And I'm just here to learn and so I can be knowledgeable when speaking with people about the ongoing dog poop saga. Thanks for including me.
So glad you're here, Jess. Florin?
Good afternoon, Florin Policio, Town of Jackson Public Works Director, happily implementing Sandy Buckstaff's plan as we go. And my word for the day is delisting, as in getting Flat Creek taken off of the impaired list for sediment.
Thanks, Florin. Great job. Jason? You might be muted, Jason. I'm going to go, let's see, there's one iPhone that I can't see who the name is. And Jason, you can try to get sound or just use chat. Can the person, I can only see iPhone.
That might be Meg Jenkins from the airport. You did mention my name earlier, so I don't know if you can see me.
Oh, no, I can't. That was Megan, I said, but welcome, Meg.
No worries. Hi. Sorry about that. Unfortunately, would have my camera on, but I'm en route to pick up my little one from school because she's got a cold and they're kicking her out. So apologize for that. Next time I will have my camera on, but I am Meg Jenkins. communications manager and public information officer at the airport. I also work very hand in hand with the sustainability team and have worked with a lot of agencies on the call. At the airport, we are very focused on stormwater. And as many of you know, we do have a swath of our own water quality issues at the airport. So just very grateful to be here at the table with all of you. And my word of the day is stewardship, because I think everyone has a responsibility to be good stewards of this beautiful place that we work and live in. So thank you.
Great. Thanks. And welcome to everybody. I know that takes time and it's easier in person. We're delighted with the diversity of interest and the expertise on all of the stakeholder groups. And we just wanted to make that very apparent. So welcome and thank you for your time. I'm going to kick it right over to my colleague, Ashley Babcock. Did I miss anyone who doesn't have a speaking role later? Travis, you can introduce yourself, but yeah. Okay, just use chat if I did. And Ashley, let's get to you and you can give them a outline of today and the next couple months.
Thanks, Sarah. So we'll kind of cruise through this because Chris and Sarah have touched on a lot of this, but we're coming together because we want to make sure you all are starting on the same page as far as water quality and water sources in the county. We're going to go through some of the science specifically pertaining to stormwater and non-point source solution. And that'll be the first half of the meeting. And then the second half of the meeting, we're going to ask for your interaction and participation on two things. We want to, one, go through some ideal outcomes and get some specifics from you all about what you know, tapping into your on the ground expertise and why you care about these issues. We want that to help inform the project team as we move forward. And lastly, we're going to discuss some of the mitigation strategy ranking criteria that we've already come up with, and we want your feedback on other things that are important to you so that we can keep those in mind as we start to draft the master plan. So moving forward, we asked you to be here because you're experts in stormwater and non-point source solution, and we're asking you to provide that quality control for us as a project team. Most importantly, we just ask that you come with curiosity, that you listen to others, and that we're making sure that we get those minority opinions or controversial issues on the table. We want to make sure we all have strong alignment. The more in alignment we can be, the easier it is for the county commissioners to adopt our plan and agree with us, because we're making their job easier by streamlining. So we just ask that you come with a collaboration and consensus mindset, which some of you have already mentioned. So hopefully that won't be too challenging. We're really looking forward to working with you. As Chris said, the county commissioners are the decision makers ultimately. And we as a project team are creating a plan that prioritizes the recommendations and next steps that are informed by you all. So from the emails, you might have seen this, but we're really asking you to participate in 3 meetings, including this one. The March and September meetings are up for discussion. We'll talk about at the very end about whether they'll be virtual, in person, or hybrid. And then in April, just keep in mind, we'll be asking for your feedback on mitigation strategy selection. So if you all can attend those next 2 meetings and respond to that email, that'll kind of be the things that we're asking of you. And we really appreciate you volunteering to participate in this effort. And I'll kick it over to Travis.
Thank you, Ashley, and thanks to all of you for being here today. I'm Travis Evans with Tri-Hydro, and I'm the project manager on this project. And usually I would have other team members assisting me with the presentation, but my colleague that was going to do a lot of the presenting today had a conflict that couldn't be rescheduled. So you're stuck with me. But to start out, I just wanted to provide a high-level overview of Teton County's water resources. As all of you, I'm sure you know that surface waters in the county, many of them are designated as wild and scenic, as they're part of the Snake River headwaters. And then a lot of the water quality of the streams within the county are of the highest quality when compared to the DEQ classifications. Most all of the waters are either class 1 or class 2AB surface waters. But we also, and this is really a big reason why we're here today, is there are impaired streams in the county. And one of your primary drinking water sources is the alluvial aquifer. And there are some other aquifers that provide water, but drinking water, but the alluvial aquifer is certainly the primary source in the county, which leads me to that is part of the Eastern Snake River Plain sole source aquifer. Teton County lies in the source area. And I'll touch on that a little further here later. I'm sure all of you realize that Flat Creek is designated as impaired. The map I'm sharing is from DEQ's fact sheets from the 2020 305B and 303D report. As you can see, the upper reach of Flat Creek in the blue is not designated as impaired. The section that runs through town down to High School Road is impaired for aquatic life other than fish. And then the lower segment in red is impaired for aquatic life other than fish, cold water fish, and recreation. Those impairments are, designations are a result of sampling efforts by DEQ. I believe the sampling efforts occurred in 2017 from May to August. And what led to the impairment designation for the lower reach was E. coli concentrations were 126 colonies per 100 milliliters. They exceeded that level, so it was designated as impaired for recreational use. And then it's also the green area is still listed as impaired due to substrate alteration, and it moves slower velocities through town. One of the things that came from the impairment of Flat Creek back in the early 2000s was the development of a Flat Creek watershed management plan. And, Sandy alluded to that already. And that plan has been in place since the early 2000s. It was recently updated in 2019. I think it also led to the formation of the Flat Creek Watershed Improvement District as well. But as I'm sure you're aware, a lot of the town's stormwater ultimately discharges into Flat Creek. So we'll touch on that a little later today as well. The other impaired stream in the county is Fish Creek throughout its entire length. And that was the same process for designating it as impaired. E. coli concentrations were above the 126 colonies per 100 milliliters. And I think there were 3 out of 4 geometric means at each of these sampling stations that supported that. I believe Fish Creek, they're in the process of selecting a consultant to prepare a watershed improvement plan. And I guess I might point out the reason they're going the route of watershed improvement plans is the other option would be to establish a total maximum daily load, or TMDL. And they've opted to go down the watershed improvement plan path on Fish Creek as well. I just wanted to clarify the sole source aquifer and what it means. If you can see here on the screen, the dark green area is the area that was designated as the Snake River Eastern Plains sole source, or Eastern Snake River Plains sole source aquifer. And then the area you see that's hatched and has the dotted shading, it's designated as the source area. And essentially what sole source aquifer designation means is it gives the EPA the authority to review projects that receive federal funding within the source area or the actual aquifer area, and to ensure that those projects won't degrade water quality. That is really the only regulatory mechanism associated with sole source aquifer designation. And then with that, I did want to touch on, as part of this project, we've gone through over It's over 40 reports that have been done over time, starting with the Section 208 water quality prepared in the early or mid 70s, all the way up to the recent Conservation District septic effluent monitoring study that was just released here a month or so ago. There are some general conclusions I think we've drawn from our review of all the reports and the data that's been provided. One is the alluvial aquifer is very complex and not fully understood. And I mention this because a lot of the reports have suggested further study, but that next level of study to fully understand the alluvial aquifer and to characterize it is it's a very large effort. There have been some studies done in the past, and I think it's well documented that surface and groundwater is very much interconnected, and the groundwater responds to rises in surface water flows in the Snake River, Fish and Flat Creek. The water quality data we have, there is a lot of it over throughout the county, but it's not all gathered at the same time, or it's also maybe focused more on specific issues. But I'd say the most comprehensive data set we do have is from the Conservation District, and it's data they've really focused on collecting over since probably the early mid 2000s. There's been a lot of studies about nutrient and microbial sources, and I think it's still up in the air if it's really clear what those sources are. And there's maybe some additional work that needs to be done there to figure that out. But that's just a high level overview. I guess maybe we could just open it up for any questions at this point, or we could roll on more into what we've looked at from a stormwater and non-point source standpoint.
Sarah?
Yes.
I don't know how to raise my hand with the controls, but I wanted to clarify two things that Travis touched on. One is that the Flat Creek Management Plan that was put in place somewhere between 2000, or maybe it was around 2005, and then was updated recently. Credit needs to be given to the Teton Conservation District. They're the people who led that effort. And the other thing is that the Flat Creek Watershed Improvement District, the impetus for that did not actually arise out of the efforts of TCD, but rather it was an effort by the town to address wintertime flooding. And to be honest, it was an effort by the town to provide a buffer for the town, to have the folks who are impacted by wintertime flooding on Flat Creek to be, given that they are the closest to the problem, the flooding, that they would be closest to dealing with or arriving at some sort of a way to address that flooding. So just those two fine points.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy.
And all of you are welcome to use voices, chat, or the hand raise signal, or just raise your hand. And if you're on camera, I'll see you. Anybody else have a question or comment for Travis?
This is Aida. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I do have a couple of questions. First of all, I'm wondering where exactly Fish Creek changes from green to red on the ribbon map.
Let me go back there.
I saw it on the map, but I'm just wondering in like.
Well, Fish Creek, the whole area is red. Black
Oh, I'm
Creek.
sorry, Flat Creek. I'm sorry.
No worries, I do that all the time.
Yeah.
It changes at High School Hill or High School Road.
So right at High School Road, that's where like one of the measurements are that make it red? Okay. Okay, thank you.
And that measurement didn't exceed, it was the measurement down here toward the Snake River that was the exceedance. So they have a measurement here that didn't exceed, so that's why it's green.
I'm not seeing a cursor if that's what you're trying to.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah. But I do see the black triangle though.
And Ron
Fine.
may have some input. Carlin's got a comment I want everyone to see in chat, but Ron, are you addressing this question?
Well, not directly today. I did not come to this presentation ready to present something, but my group is a group that's responsible for listing, delisting, TMDLs, those sorts of things. I'd be happy at some future date if you want more detail on these sorts of things. I'd be happy to put a quick presentation together at some future meeting if that's something you're interested in.
That could be, I don't know if other people think that's necessary. I was just curious about exactly.
Why don't
your
we,
team.
it might be good for you two to have a conversation, but let's see if there are other questions pertaining to today, because we do have some substance that we want to go over so that you understand how you will be making decisions in the subsequent meetings and making sure that we do get you the understanding of the data, AIDA, or
I'm okay. That answered my question.
Okay.
I'm okay.
Cool. Thanks. And thanks for participating. Carlin, any more to say on your, I lost the chat box. Carlin's just clarifying Fish Creek watershed planning efforts. A watershed plan will be generated and submitted to the DEQ for approval. The plan will qualify Fish Creek for federal funds for restoration projects and other best management practices. It's up to the DEQ whether that plan is used as a TMDL alternative or to issue a TMDL. Just want to make sure everybody saw that.
Yeah, and that was just a chat point that I submitted, Sarah. Just some clarification on Fish Creek watershed planning.
Thanks, David. Okay, I don't see any other hands. Feel free to interrupt anytime you need to, and back to you, Travis.
Okay, well, this part of the presentation is varied over the last 3 group meetings and what we've presented, but we've kind of taken a different look at stormwater, and I just wanted to, before we got into some of our analysis, just talk about the county and town's roles regarding stormwater and non-point sources. And then also, really what we're going to really talk about is a sensitivity and vulnerability analysis we perform for surface waters. And I think to start out, just want to talk about the county's management of stormwater. This is managed through the county's land development regulations. It both includes permitting process. It includes permitting processes to manage the stormwater. And, generally this means the county has certain requirements regarding water body and wetland buffers, certain setbacks for those. You can't build in floodplains or a certain distance from a water body or wetland. The county has also, implemented natural resource overlay standards to reduce impacts on things like critical spawning areas for endangered species or other sensitive mammals or land species or birds. And then the county, in the permitting process, they require grading and erosion control permits prior to any earth moving activities. And that really, sets the stage to provide requirements for developers to monitor and manage stormwater runoff so that they don't impact surface water quality. And then the county engineer does have that option to require a stormwater management plan for those smaller sites that are below 5 acres. No, an acre or less, sorry. And then that would also require approval before there was any development. So, I guess in long story short, the county does have a lot of stormwater management requirements with development on projects that are under their regulatory purview. And then the town has a similar process with their land development regulations as well. Their LDRs have established grading standards, erosion control standards, and stormwater management standards, where developers need to, they can't allow runoff to exceed the historic runoff rate, or pre-development rate. So if they were to add a bunch of pavement, that would require some retention and detention facilities. to control the amount of stormwater going off site. Usually that's all taken care of during the permitting process. There likely would be there. I think they still have the option to require the stormwater management plan, depends on the size of the development. But then the town also manages infrastructure, their stormwater collection systems. And Sandy referred to the town's master plan put together back in the early 2000s. The town is currently working on updating that plan as we speak, and that project schedule is kind of on the same schedule as this project. The town has done a lot of things to help improve water quality. They've installed treatment units at certain stormwater outfall locations to reduce sediments and litter that goes into Flat Creek. They also have, the town is responsible for managing the Carnes Meadows treatment wetlands. And as many of you know, the main snow storage area in town is for the town is at the rodeo grounds. And I think that consists of, there's a filtration system at the stormwater inlet on the rodeo grounds. And then that water is conveyed to the Carnes Meadow treatment wetlands, which is shown to be effective in improving water quality at that point. So those are some of the things the town has done as well. So I guess this is a unique approach. This is something that one of our hydrologists came up with to evaluate sensitivity and vulnerability to surface waters from non-point sources. And one of the key components of this analysis was the land cover type. And what we did was we took the LiDAR mapping that was done in 2013 through the Kogan group, commonly referred to as the Kogan project, where they characterized the different land cover types throughout the study area in the county. And we then distilled those land cover categories into 19 broader categories to reduce the number. I think the Kogan mapping, I mean, there are over 50 different land cover types. So we reduced it into 19 primary land cover categories and then assigned a hazard category. And as you can see, the least hazardous gets a ranking of 1. The most hazardous gets a ranking of 10. And different land uses and vegetation categories are going to be able to mitigate the potential for runoff and pollution from runoff in different ways. So what we used part of that data for was to conduct a sensitivity analysis to determine how sensitive each surface water is to pollution due to non-point and physical characteristics. And those characteristics, these are physical characteristics that represent natural conditions. So we looked at soil hydraulic conductivity, depths of groundwater, and topography. The hydraulic conductivity, impacts surface waters because water and contaminants will percolate through those faster, some soils faster than others. We use depths of groundwater because throughout the county, the depths of groundwater is relatively shallow. And we felt it was critical to include that because if you have a highly conductive superficial soils, water could percolate into the groundwater relatively quickly. Plus, we all know that the groundwater and surface waters are very much interconnected and in communication. And then finally, the topography was evaluated based on slope. The steeper the slope, you have more runoff, which allows for more impacted water to move into a surface water body. So the figure you see here is just the overall sensitivity of surface waters, and we kind of refer to this as a surface water sensitivity pollution potential for Teton County. The warmer colors, the red, purples, and pinks those are the higher sensitivity. They have a higher sensitivity. The greens and yellows are lower sensitivity. So it just gives us an idea based on the natural state what could impact surface waters. And then we looked at, actually, I'm going to give you a little better map that's blown up a little more. The areas with the highest sensitivity are between the Snake River and Fish Creek. And then obviously the town of Jackson is sensitive just due to its proximity to surface waters. And then the area southwest of town, South Park area is also one of the more sensitive areas. But then the next step was looking at vulnerability is, what kind of impact can humans have on surface waters? And the vulnerability analysis was done to determine how vulnerable each surface water body is to pollution due to non-point sources and human impacts, such as the proximity to urban areas or potential stormwater outfalls. The proximity to urban areas was evaluated by looking at the geographical boundaries of 7 urban areas in Teton County, which included Alta, Jackson, Kelly, Moose, Moran, Teton Village, and Wilson. And then calculating how far away each surface water body was from that urban area. And a surface water that is near to an urban area would have a higher vulnerability to human impact. The other one we looked at was proximity to potential outfalls. We used a broader method to define those. The town is currently inventorying those outfalls and getting an accurate location on those. But we also don't have a good handle on other outfalls that might fall into the creek or creeks or water bodies. So we just applied a buffer to each water body. And then just said, yeah, there's potential for outfalls to be along all of these surface water bodies. Excuse me. So what you see here is an overall view of the surface water vulnerability. And then to look at it in a little more detail, the highest vulnerabilities are within any of the urban area borders and areas very near to creeks. And I realize it's probably a little hard to see here, but you look along Fish Creek up here in Wilson, where it's in the urban area, it's very vulnerable. And I mean, from our standpoint, we're seeing 27 to 33 and above 33 a scoring this. Those are the most vulnerable areas. I think that was about all I had there. So this is really looking at the potential to be polluted. And then some of the things we're continuing to look at is water quality impacts from nutrient loading. The USGS did a study back in the 2000s that they looked at nutrient loading on Fish Creek. We're proposing to use some of those same loading rates to evaluate loading on a watershed basis from golf courses and lawns and parks. One area that's challenging to calculate a nutrient loading is from agriculture. The time span where you have livestock on rangeland, it varies. The number of cattle or horses in that area varies over time. But that's something we're continuing to think about and look at. In that study from the USGS, they looked at a loading rate of 92 pounds per acre for nitrogen on golf courses and 2.4 pounds per acre for phosphorus. And then for lawns and parks, that previous study assumed 170 pounds per acre for nitrogen and 12 pounds per acre for phosphorus on lawns and parks. So we're still working through that. We're looking at some nutrient loading from wastewater facilities as well, and atmospheric deposition. Some of the other areas, and I really appreciate, I think it was Lisa brought up the hospital and snow storage. that is another area we're going to look at. We have been looking at. Again, the town, they manage their snow. They store their snow from snow removal operations on the fairground or at the rodeo grounds. You know, so the snow accumulates from all the plowing activities throughout town, and then it has to be removed from the streets. Well, then you're concentrating potential contaminants into a single area, which will melt off and percolate through the surface and get into groundwater or run off and go into the Flat Creek via the treatment wetlands. We have been making a lot of phone calls to snow removal, landscaping companies in Teton County. We've only had 3 responses, or we actually had 3 people indicate that they took snow somewhere off site. For the most part, throughout the county, snow is just pushed up on the property as it's removed and left there to melt. So this is something that I think it's worth looking at further. You know, some potential solutions that we might be able to do moving forward is to suggest some BMPs for homeowners or business owners, that how they could, if they have to leave snow piled on their property, how they could help mitigate pollution by providing some sort of silt fences or straw bales around inlets to reduce sediment flow into storm sewers or surface water bodies. And we're certainly looking for some input there. Some other areas that I think we need to look at, and it's been addressed in other studies, is potential impacts from pet waste. There are a lot of people that use pathways and trails throughout the county, which could have an impact on water quality. One other area we're trying to get a handle on is potential impacts from irrigation return flows. You know, you have the potential for increased sediments and nutrients and irrigation runoff that flows back into a surface water body. And then also, you know, other areas is surface water features such as ponds. You know, what kind of an impact would they have on groundwater quality? If they're treated, or just the natural creation, I guess, of nutrients from algae and aquatic life. But the next thing we're going to do is we have a similar sensitivity and vulnerability analysis for groundwater, and we're going to want to overlay this analysis over the wastewater and groundwater analysis to see if there's any correlations there as well. So with that, I think I'm open for questions and some discussion.
Travis, there was a request for large legible copies of the map, so I'm assuming we can get those uploaded to the website and perhaps email versions to Scott Pearson made the request, but others may have it. So let's.
Yeah, and I guess maybe to clarify or add on to that is have a report nearly completed that really discusses this process in much more detail that will include those maps and will be issued to all of you.
Perfect.
Hey, Travis, there was another question in the chat about TMDL of what pollutants, and I'm not sure at what point that came in, if we were talking about Fish Creek or Flat Creek. Maybe Kay, you could qualify that.
Yes, I was thinking about Flat Creek. I happen to live on Flat Creek, so I see a lot of recreational use. I would call it full body contact. So, but I haven't really seen any analysis to look at reducing other than just agricultural uses or ground uses as to the pathways for contamination. I mean, I might suspect that leaking sewer lines or, maybe poor septic or other pathways are getting E. coli and nitrates into the creek. So I'm not sure that I see the, from what I understand, the water management plan is the TMDL for that.
Well, I think, I guess with the water, with this plan, we're not going to be. So let me back up and maybe Ron can help me out, but I think for Flat Creek specifically, DEQ accepted the watershed management plan in lieu of developing a TMDL. But as part of this study in the water quality master plan, we are looking at other potential impacts or sources of impacts such as wastewater and other point sources as well. So, you know, we're just focused on the stormwater part today, but we're looking at other potential pollutant sources countywide.
Is that under this working group?
That is under separate stakeholder groups.
Okay, thank you.
They will all be looking at it, Travis, from their lens, yeah.
Right.
If I could ask maybe just one other question, besides trying to understand the input, will this group look at restoration for streams, or not necessarily where the input is, but restoration along the surface waters that actually may end up being downstream that are maybe better suited to restoration or uptake of pollutants?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's going to be part of our discussion here a little later on, actually, is we're going to talk about and get your input as a group on potential mitigation measures to restore water quality.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Kay. Anybody else? Thanks for helping with chat, Chris. Did I miss?
No, there's another one on chat there, Sarah, for I think for Travis.
Travis, I'll read it for you from Leslie. I would like to add that bank and channel instability is a known vector for sediment pollution. Is that going to be studied?
Yeah, I think it's going to be considered. The scope of our project to study it in detail is not there, but it's certainly going to be a consideration.
Florin?
Yes, hi. In response to the prior question, also, even though the town has worked with Conservation District to help support the action items from their Flat Creek watershed or management plan, that that's sort of our in lieu of a TMDL for Flat Creek as a community. But we are taking on our stormwater management program effort that Travis mentioned that's kind of going parallel with this county project. But in that, we've actually modeled it after EPA's minimum control measures for MS4 stormwater communities, which are larger towns and cities across the US that have requirements, whether it's TMDL based or not, but the programmatic elements of those typical types of stormwater management permitted programs are what we are building out for our town plan also.
Thanks, Florin. I don't see any other questions. Wait, Sandy, is that a hand up? Look at you. You found your icon. You've got.
I did find it, and I wanted to congratulate Florin on moving forward with a program that is consistent with the MS4. It's usually for larger communities, but I always thought when I was a town engineer that we would get there at some point because one, we're forward thinking, two, our environment is special, or we like to believe that it is. And the MS4 constraints or strictures are something that we should aspire to. So congratulations to Florin and the town of Jackson. I have one other comment. I don't see in this agenda any discussion of funding of things like the effort that Florin is going through right now to implement stormwater filtration. And at some point, I think that's worthy of discussion. There is within state law the ability to have a surface water drainage utility. My understanding is there's only one community in the state, and that's Cheyenne, has one in place. But when they voted it in place, they did not vote in a funding mechanism. So they have to rely on grants and gifts and so on. So it's not really very effective. To get it in place with a funding mechanism would require a vote of the members of the community that want to put it in place. And I was hoping for that as a long-range goal when I was a town engineer. I still hope for it. So
Chris, do you want to take that as far as SPET funding? Is that a place to start?
Well, I think that's a great suggestion, that we can, everybody, hopefully, these are meetings are being recorded. So these mitigation ideas that you're producing are going to go into the hopper for consideration. So thank you for that. And second, yes, the water quality SPET measure that passed this fall by voters in our community for $10 million for water quality. We have some very specific items on that list that we're committed to. One of those was in support of the town's stormwater projects. And so there was a portion of those funds that we were planning for that purpose. The bulk of those funds that remain will be used for supporting the projects that come out of this master planning process. And so we're going to go, certainly won't have enough, but hopefully those funds will be enough for local match for competitive grants like you're suggesting. So all right in line. We'll definitely get there in the process. I know that Sarah kind of wants to keep us on track from where we're starting before we get to all the mitigation discussions, but great suggestion to start.
And that comes up in the meeting, just a preliminary discussion, mitigation strategies Travis is going to hit. I would like to move us along. I see Aida has another question first, though, or a comment.
Yeah, it's just a quick question, and it goes along with the discussion we were just having. I was wondering if any samples had been taken, or if there's a suggestion to take any samples of the large snowpack areas that are left to melt before we decide to do remediation strategies. Is there any data on potential pollutants that might be in those piles?
Travis?
I see Carlin just jumped off, but I know David Lee has that.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any, but Dave, I was going to defer to David.
I just mentioned something real briefly. Yeah, thanks for the question, Aida. We've done some investigation in-house, Teton Conservation District, for specifically sediment. So measuring suspended sediment concentration extrapolated over the entire snow storage pile. And to give you just a preliminary kind of measurement of that, if anyone's familiar with the Hungry Jack's parking lots, that snow storage pile that TCD is cost shared with the land trust to remove every year to prevent that from going to Edmondson Spring, it's calculated about 1,800 pounds of sediment in that snowbank. So not a whole lot of data regarding metals or nutrients in that snowpack, but we do have a little bit of an idea of the amount of sediment that these kind of snow storage piles are able to transport in the spring.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thanks for all the discussion, all of you. And I know a few had to leave earlier and they said their goodbyes in chat, but thanks for the robust discussion, and we'll have a few more opportunities. I'd like to move, thank you, Travis, into a slightly different conversation. We just want you to keep in mind both the technical there's science, there's data, there's engineering prescriptions, and we are well equipped with all of your expertise, which we appreciate. I'd like to take you through some open-ended questions here, and let's just keep it straightforward, and we'll start from the top. First, and this is really for Ashley and I and the project team to make sure that we have your words and your priorities, and we have a chance to hear, since this is maybe it's the first stakeholder group meeting and only the second time that we've had any opportunity to hear so comprehensively from you. It helps us. So the first thing I wanted to ask, and you can use chat or your voices, what specific topics, and some have come up already, are you really looking forward to weighing in on? What specific topics brought you to this stakeholder group? And I will say, because it came up yesterday, it's awkward. There's a lot of us. I'll be pausing. Don't be alarmed. We can learn to be with a little bit of awkward silence if that is a way that we include, or it can be a way that we include more perspectives. And Ashley and Chris, please help me watch chat so I don't miss anything. Ron?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to sign off in a minute, so I thought I might as well go first, at least with what topics you're looking forward to weighing in on. My program is the program, DEQ's program, that's responsible for identifying impaired waters and developing plans to restore them. So I'm very interested in participating in any of those aspects related to any of the currently listed streams. We can certainly provide a great deal of technical expertise regarding any kind of water quality monitoring, data analysis, ideas regarding best management practices, etc.
Great, thanks, Ron. So the planning itself on the impaired streams, thank you. Is that you, Megan Jenkins, with your hand
It
up?
is. It is. Hey, thanks for calling on me. Just wanted to share that, my biggest interest is just seeing what the community missions are. And I think this is a great plan and great collaboration, and look forward to being part of the conversation as it evolves. Just as a little background information for airport specifics, the airport is in a really great position to collect all the stormwater from our entire facility. With our runway reconstruction project, we did put double walled slot drains around the whole exterior of that runway. So we were already collecting all of the other surface water at the airport that funnels into our fairly new stormwater system. Was installed just a handful of years ago. It's capable of handling 100-year stormwater event. And so now we were very excited to link up the runway on that as well. So we'll be catching all that runoff. So we have the capacity to filter all of the stormwater, nearly all of the stormwater that is coming and running off at the airport. And in addition to that, about 11 years ago, we put the glycol capture pad there, which captures all of the spent de-icing fluid. And we actually pump that out, and the water content isn't too high. It can be recycled at a facility in Salt Lake. So a little background on info on the airport and stormwater, and just look forward to how we can be a community partner with this. Thanks.
Thank you. Ashley, do you want to read Kay's chat? Anybody else? I'm watching for hands. Topics that haven't been touched on that you want to make sure come up. It's been a robust discussion so far, but I'm always surprised.
Yeah, so there were two actually. So Katie first wrote that she's interested in preventing future conflicts between State Land Trust, Teton County, Wyoming DEQ when construction projects are initiated, specifically regarding stormwater permitting. And then Kay is talking about basic buffers for all inputs from residential properties near and along surface waters, and identifying restoration areas for uptake of pollutants.
Great,
Yeah, I guess maybe I should also mention that is since I live along Flat Creek, I witnessed a lot. Given the University of Wyoming studies of E. coli and the different inputs, just how the Flat Creek is identified. I noticed in the very beginning, the introduction, it was impaired for aquatic, but it wasn't after it left town that it was impaired for recreation. But yet, since I live near Garmin Park, I routinely see very young people spending hours sitting and playing in the creek, which to me means they're also drinking some, because that's kind of a basic pathway if you're going to be in the creek to make sure it's adequately characterized.
Thanks, Kay. There's Tanya, I'm going to have you go, and then I'll move us into the second question, encouraging more in the chat if we don't hear your voice. Go ahead, Tanya.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I love all the things that have come out of this, from sediment to snow storage to dog poop as topics of interest, but also want to add in resiliency in the case of larger storm events and approaching it from that perspective.
Thank you, Tanya. I'm going to go ahead and Chris, I see your hand. Go ahead. I was like, I'm going to put and
sorry,
you up as you start, because the next question is about ideals, right? Ideal outcomes. So ask your question, and then I'd ask you to consider starting us off like you did yesterday.
Sure. So one of the things that's come up in some of the other top stakeholder groups is this need for increased monitoring, and kind of getting to what Kay was talking about. Having some more real-time monitoring as there are things like impairments being placed. And so I was thankful for the discussion from DQ and offer to put together a good robust monitoring program. But I know that other efforts are happening with looking at a watershed monitoring effort. So I'm hoping we can combine forces and funds and find a way to do that comprehensively with all of everybody's efforts. And on the next question, why do we care?
It a little bit. All of you, everything is really great feedback. This is an opportunity for you to 60,000 foot view. This is important. Megan, you mentioned it, like water is the most precious resource. We're talking about kids playing in streams. This is an opportunity for us to hear from you in your own words. What are ideal outcomes? Why are they important to you? And Chris kicked this off yesterday, and I appreciated the discussion it generated, Chris. So I'm going to ask you to just repeat yourself.
Yeah, so the reason the county is involved in this, besides it's the right thing to do, I hope it's because our comprehensive plan directs us to be stewards of water resources in the community, and that this is the water and ecosystem are some of our highest values in this community. It's what brings people here, and it's what we care about. So, I mean, I think that's why we as a county care about this topic. For myself personally, and you mentioned Flat Creek, we are recreational users of these waters, and we drink the groundwater that's below them. And my family, I have 2 small kids at home that play in the creek, and I'm concerned about their safety and all of our safety here in the community. So that's why I care about this topic.
Thanks, Chris. So clean and safe water for kids. I've heard a lot of great stuff today. If anybody else has anything to add right now about ideal outcomes, we welcome your feedback. Florin had to go, but she might come back. Lisa, please go ahead. Thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to consider air quality when we're looking at solutions for snow storage. Just looking at how much heavy equipment is run at the fairgrounds for 6 months. And then the impact of moving snow off of the hospital grounds. I'm not sure where it's going. But I know our facility is looking at ways to melt the snow. There's a CO2 impact on that too. So it's it's really tricky, but I value the air quality and our CO2 production as well.
Thanks, Lisa. How about new technologies that you might be aware of, other than what's been mentioned so far? Anybody have anything to add in terms of solutions that you've heard about being used elsewhere that we might look into? And a comment from Kay in chat, it may be helpful to do measurable parameters that can show progress of. Kay, you might need to come on and tell me what you meant.
Oh, yes, my grammar wasn't very good. So I think in any study, especially since this one's going to be a long term, there's not going to be a 6-month remediation of all issues, is to have some measures, maybe some points where, for maybe in Flat Creek or some of these areas where you can do a simple TDS or TSS so that we can build out kind of some measuring tools that show progress. Anyways, I think it's very tough whenever you implement policies, let's say for how stormwater is going to come out of the city, if to think 1 year or 2 years from now, have these changed and made a difference besides having policies, if that helps. And when you're talking about new technology, I think recognizing the ability that the University of Wyoming demonstrated, which was state of the art, and looking at the DNA of E. coli really is a remarkable measurement. And even though she may not be able to do this every year, but to keep that as a technology vision to have more of that, it maybe help with the dog poop answer or what our resources are. So
Thanks, Kay. I will keep moving us on. Is there anything, just catch-all question, you want us to keep in mind about process, communication, ways that you are having access to information? We're trying to keep the website really updated. Obviously, we have a very high priority for true collaboration and transparency. Is there anything that you ask us to keep in mind or feel like has not come up? Kelsey, yes.
Hey, I think just echoing what Kay just said, I was the author of that study. And I think that she's right in saying that the university has a lot of potential, or there's a lot of potential collaborations here with the university, especially because this is such a long, your vision has kind of great length. So I think you could, if you start communicating with interested professors over there, could definitely initiate some really intriguing studies.
Great, thanks. And really congratulations on your paper, Kelsey. We appreciate your work. Aida.
Yeah, along those same lines, I guess I started to put this in the chat. I guess I'd like to help or see some efforts be made to look at other potential contaminants in stormwater. I mean, it's great so far. The sediment load, those are definitely important. Microbes, the idea to include those is very important. But I haven't seen anything about trace organics, trace metals, other things that really could be an issue for stormwater runoff. And when we talk about doing mitigation, we kind of need a baseline to start from, so people know why we want to mitigate, so that we have a baseline number to go from for future monitoring.
Chris or Florin, do you have a response to that?
think Florence stepped away, but I think, you know, that baseline monitoring has come up over and over. The need to have, you know, not only to know where we're at, but to know if what we are using for mitigation is effective. And so I think that certainly will be one of our outcomes.
I actually did jump back on. Hi, Chris and everybody. We actually do have another part of our scope for the stormwater management program is to work with the conservation district to see if there might be like meaningful updates that we could make to our monitoring program in partnership with them. And we'd be interested in baselining. We haven't gotten into the weeds yet with what parameters to baseline or how, you know, the frequency of testing and all that stuff. But I agree with Chris. I think it's certainly on our radar, and the early steps toward it are underway.
Anybody else? And Tanya, jump.
I'll just add though, also we could improve our, you know, reduce our impacts to stormwater runoff drastically if we could convince people to stop driving.
Thanks, Lauren. Anybody else before I turn it back over to Travis?
Kay Modi again, especially what Lauren was saying. I think I have seen, but it's been a long time, some EPA studies that show what type of vehicles shed what type of pollutants, because they would definitely be part of the organic loading to roadways. You know, just oil from vehicles do have some basic metallurgy. So I'm not sure if that's helpful, but it might be an interesting input given the number of vehicles.
Yeah, great. I would not have thought of that, Kay. Thank you. Let us, Travis, can I kick it back over to you and you'll walk through the sensitivity and criteria slides?
Yeah, actually, yeah, we're gonna talk a little more about, you know, how we would go about selecting mitigation measures. You know, how do we identify the best strategies? And I just came up with a general list here of potential criteria for ranking mitigation measures as they're identified, and we look at them further. Because that's really what we're asking some input, or we're asking all of you for your input on, or what are some potential mitigation measures moving forward. And I'll talk a little bit about the process here a little later on, but kind of focused on the different criteria that I've thought of just offhand. And you can see them here on this slide as criteria for selection, but you know, things that have really popped out as being important to a lot of other stakeholders include social benefits. And I know it just says, will it protect society as a whole, or will the project benefit society as a whole? But another thing that came up was we also need to address, you know, other members of the community that might not be as engaged or involved in the process, that might not have the resources to support some of these efforts. So keeping everyone in mind, you know, cost is going to be an important component of selection. Is it a high capital cost project, or is it a low capital cost project with high operating costs over time? That'll come into play potentially. But these are just some initial criteria, and I guess I'm curious to hear from all of you what you think some important criteria for selecting mitigation strategies might be going forward. So I'm certainly open to any input on that. But maybe it benefit too, I could tell you more how we're thinking the process would go to rank mitigation measures going forward. I'm going to jump to Chris's point I just saw pop up on chat because I think it's a good one. And we've been talking about it internally. one thing that's come up related to stormwater runoff is just, I guess, illicit dumping of RVs or illegal dumping of RV tanks, whether it's in the town or the county. I think Tanya, she could certainly weigh in, but she brought up that there's a lot of people that live in, small RVs or vans throughout town over the course of the year. And we're seeing there's a real need that we could potentially create a RV dump station that's convenient for users. But we're seeing that as a potential source of impacts to water quality, to be honest. So I guess maybe just to go over how we're looking at how the process as we see it would be for ranking mitigation measures. Obviously, we're here to get your input on screening criteria, and I'll go back to that slide when I'm done with this slide. But get your input on the screening criteria. And then also we're going to provide you some thoughts on what we think some good mitigation measures would be in a future report. We're going to have a report coming out shortly to each of the groups that we're going to just maybe throw out some suggested mitigation measures. Those are in no way set in stone. So we're going to throw those out and get your feedback on mitigation measures in March. And once we meet in March, we're going to conduct a preliminary screening of all the mitigation measures that were presented and rank those based on the criteria we establish. And that preliminary screening will be done by us at Tri-Hydro. And then we'll also get input from the project team, which is the county, the town, Protect Our Water Jackson Hole, and the conservation district, and maybe refine that ranking from a preliminary standpoint. But what I'm hoping will come from that is we can really identify, 5, 6 mitigation measures that really warrant some detailed evaluation. And we would do that detailed evaluation, then go back to the project team to refine that ranking. And then once we get concurrence from the project team, those final mitigation measure rankings would be incorporated into the master plan. And I think Sandy brought it up earlier, but the master plan is also going to look at the costs, potential funding sources for projects. It's going to also lay out a schedule for implementing these mitigation measures, as well as identify who'd be responsible for making that happen. So.
Great. And Travis, there's an interesting suggestion in chat from Leslie about adding prevention of pollutants and contaminants getting in the first place as a criteria. And we're capturing all the chat, so we have verbatim, but that is a new one. Chris, you had your hand up.
No, I just wanted to point that out as well. I think that is a really, really thoughtful suggestion that we haven't heard yet. And as we've been thinking about mitigation measures, maybe there are, we've also talked about like the need for education and outreach, but maybe there's another category here, which is preventative measures that we move forward. So that's a great suggestion. Thanks, Leslie.
And more support for that, plus a new question from Kay. Can anyone give a brief note on the use of Carnes Meadow as a buffer? And Florence says, yes, there's an engineered wetland component. So asked and answered. Are there any questions of Travis in terms of the next steps, how they're thinking about the criteria and the ranking? And obviously, if something comes up, like Leslie, if you had that idea tomorrow, it wouldn't be too late. You just get in touch with us. But I don't see any other questions. So I think that means straightforward and they understand, Travis.
Well, and I think the other way we can communicate is to, if you have any thoughts or ideas, to provide them to us through the project input site. And I think that was shared earlier, and Ashley might just share it again if she'd be so kind.
And then Aida asks, is there currently a list of potential mitigation projects?
Chris, do we want to touch on those short-term possibilities?
Yeah, I can touch on that. I want to just comment on Karma Meadows, which I'm sure was just a typo, but I think that is a good slip of the tongue. It's an important spot. Yes, we've been asked by the county commissioners to put together a short-term list of mitigation measures, things that we know are rising to the top of this discussion that we can bring forth and try to start to budget for and plan for within staff work plans before the end of this planning effort. And so right now we're working with Tri-Hydro to put together a list of short-term mitigation wins, and some of these things that have come up will be on there in one shape or form or the other. One is the need for RV dump stations. We've talked about some monitoring, partnering and monitoring efforts. And there's several others, but I think those ones that have been mentioned here today are kind of already on that short-term list. I was thinking about, the thought from Travis that we're going to have 5 or 6 of these to evaluate. I think that the list will be much longer, and also everything that comes up here will be on the list, and we can, we'll have to prioritize that list and move it forward with what our final suggested mitigation plan is. But everything that is discussed will be captured.
Thanks, Chris. Anything else from you, Travis, or any of the other project team members?
No, I really appreciate everyone attending today and the participation. This was great. So certainly look forward to working with all of you moving forward.
Yeah, and Christy's noting, I mean, the project page and the website, Christy and others are working really hard, Ashley, to make sure all the information is there. So the other meetings, Aida, if you want to watch them, they are, I think they're all up. Is that right, Christy? All of them. That was superb work if they're already up.
Actually, we have one up. I need to do a little editing together on another one, but they should all be up, if not by the end of today, tomorrow for sure.
That's amazing. And there are a couple hours, so it's not like they won't have something to do while you finish your editing, Christy. But thank you to the county for making that resource available, and the town may be involved also. I don't know, but
and Sarah, speaking of participation, maybe we could just get a general sense from this group about whether in-person or virtual meetings are preferred.
Thanks for reminding me. So there was discussion of, about preference. And obviously what I will just say this, the attendance for these meetings this week has been superb. And that is a really high priority. So I'm not asking whether you like to meet in person or virtually better. I'm asking which one will be better for your ability to participate and attend. Hybrid is also an option that we're thinking about. So those of you, did Zoom have a significant role in your being here today? If you prefer virtual, please raise your hand or thumbs up in your screen. If you prefer Zoom, please indicate. Okay, and how about for those who would rather meet in person? And I'll leave Sandy, Lisa, and DEQ. I see one for in person. Okay. Keep that feedback coming. We don't have to do everything the same way every time. So I don't want to cut you off. It looks like, the attendance is just better virtually, but people like seeing each other and meeting in person. So, we're going to do our best to just give you a few different options, I think, but probably Zoom is always going to be an option because it seems to really encourage you to be here, and we rely on you. Anybody, Chris or anyone, have anything else to say, or shall we conclude a little bit early?
Well, thanks everybody for this is, I mean, I think out of the 4 meetings, maybe it's we got better as we went through the week. But this one in particular, there's great feedback on the chat and comments made. So appreciate all of the discussion. Any of us on the project team, but myself in particular, if you want to reach out anytime, we're available for this. And then I put in the chat the public input page, our Engage Teton County page. If you just search Engage Teton County, that'll pop up. And those, if you want to email directly to that page, it goes to everybody on the project team. So that's a great way to capture, ensure that your voice is, you know, part of the project record as we go through this process. But we're here for, I mean, as long as people want to continue the discussion, we'll stay online.
Thanks. Thank you all. So you heard it from Chris. If you have additional questions, stick around. Otherwise, back to your day as you go. Thanks to Travis and your team for such heavy lifting this week, and all of you in public service who have attended most of these meetings and added a lot as well. Now more on Zoom. Bye, Sandy. Thanks, Leslie.
I'm going to go ahead and stay on because I do have some other questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
You bet. Bye, Kristen. You can go ahead, Aida, and ask. I don't think, I mean, and Derek has a question too, it looks like.
Oh, Derek, go ahead. Go ahead with your question.
Sure, thanks. A question for Travis. Really interesting to see that you're using Kogan's 2012 land cover mapping for identifying and prioritizing the sensitivity. I'm curious, I know that they reshot some of that again this year in 2022, this time in October, and curious if that's going to be used to kind of identify areas of change that might be of a priority for potential non-point pollution. I was also curious, like, if there's any literature out there on, kind of changing from ag over to residential. I'm sure they've seen a lot, if they did do that analysis of the change in land cover from 2012 to 2022, see a lot of change from ag to residential, and what the potential pollutants from that can be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a good point, Derek. And I guess in regards to the newer data set, I guess we didn't really account that would be ready to go during this project. So we didn't really look at, as part of our scope, evaluating the difference between 2022 and 2013. That's a good thought. I'd be curious to see what it looked like and if it still covered the same extent, because the Kogan mapping had a pretty limited extent, but it might be something to consider, I think, for those reasons that you noted. So right now we didn't plan on doing that. Is, I guess, the short answer.
Sure. Is that going to be, is that data set going to be updated from the county? Is that a plan?
Derek, you got me stumped. I'm gonna have to answer that at a later date. I think so. I'm not sure. I know we paid for mapping. I'm not sure if it's going to update the Kogan land classification. That's another additional step. So you may know more about this than I do. I'd probably have to reach out to Rich Greenwood to get a good answer for you.
Gotcha, thanks.
Aida, go ahead.
So I do have a question about the vulnerability assessment, but before I ask you that, I just put a little note in the chat, and I'm happy to help with any interpretation or any planning of sampling events for other contaminants. That's kind of what I do or did, and so I'm happy to help with that. Some of my original thoughts were trace organics, plastics, microplastics. There's a lot of work being done on tire rubber. And so, and somebody made the comment about getting people not to drive. And we've even got somebody here in the community at the community college that does work on microplastics. I don't know if she includes rubber in some of her analyses. I think it's more visual than that. But I'm happy to help with any of that kind of work. And I'm not talking about a lot of sampling, but it seems to me before we ask people to mitigate, especially with their own stormwater or put in some sort of filtering device, we have to have some data to fall back on to educate them first. So that seems important. And so my question about the vulnerability assessment, so I understand where you're coming from and I understand why you did what you did. And what I'm not sure of is, you know, we've got such rapid development going on here, especially what's planned for South Park. I mean, South Park, you know, the northern South Park is pretty much going to happen. And it looks like South Park has really kind of been a given that it's going to be developed. Yet on your vulnerability assessment, it's yellow. And so is that tweakable easily? Will there be anything that talks about potential future? How do we keep up to date, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Right. No, those are good points, and it's gonna be a work in progress, I think, for perpetuity, to refine that as conditions change throughout the county. I think the idea behind it was hopefully we were hoping to identify some areas that we really needed to focus on from the outset here. I mean, the idea is that hopefully the county would take this over and be able to refine it periodically over time.
But if we do that, we're always one step behind.
Right.
And so if we're trying to look forward, the development that will happen in Southport Park, what about some green infrastructure to go into that? You know, if we really want to be proactive.
Aida, I've heard that as the spirit of Leslie's criteria too. So I think you're hitting on something that there's other support for and agreement with. And Travis, I have no idea. I'm hearing the question, just how would we factor in future conditions that we know are coming? And
permits that are already passed, you know, that we know are going to happen.
So I think that maybe for today's purposes, the best we can probably do is to make sure that that's noted, Travis, and that we need to continue to refine a better answer for Aida and others. How are we doing that? And I don't hear an answer quite yet, Aida, but I respect the spirit of the question and we'll do better. We'll give that some thought at the project team, and I'm sure Town and County with Travis and his team will just, you know, I'm struggling for words because I know it's so complicated. And
I think
than anyone.
Megan, by the way, I think a very easy thing would be just to have a section of new development and just break it out, stormwater, drinking water, et cetera, in each one of them. And anything that is coming to our attention and how it ties in. I mean, I think it should be its own subset of looking toward, maybe it's just called looking towards the future. And then there's development issues that arise and also innovation, because there are, as you're saying, Aida, that there could be some pretty innovative things that could come up. as well.
Right, and maybe a little stronger than looking towards the future, because it really is prevention. We talked about the
Yeah,
mitigation
good point.
strategies that are prevention, and that's really what
Yes.
we want.
Yes, very good point.
And I think to this case, I think I'd look more at the sensitivity analysis, which showed that area is very sensitive. And so that drives a lot of,
Exactly.
that's where we're, with other groups, there's talk, one of the concepts is they're an aquifer protection overlay. And that could also apply to things like stormwater. So if there's highly sensitive areas, there might be some different requirements for those areas.
That's exactly what caught my attention. The sensitivity was high, but the vulnerability was low. And so it just didn't jive with what I see happening. So,
You did. And
yeah.
so a couple things. I think your use of the term green infrastructure there was the first time I think I've heard one of our stakeholders use that. Travis has brought that up in our past stakeholder groups of, that is a qualifying factor, of course, for funding. And so, rolling that into maybe these aquifer area overlays might have some role. And then this isn't the only place in the community that those sensitive and vulnerability maps haven't really jived. And so we've been trying to build into the vulnerability discussion parameters that help make them more useful to us by the impacts that we know are happening on the ground. And so this is a constructive conversation for us to think about overlaying future development perhaps in those, in looking at a 20, it's hard to predict 20-year scale, but that's what we're asked to make this plan for. So but we'll put some thought to that, see how we could address it.
Great, thank you. That was actually my main comment, that and the contaminants. I think those were the main ones. You already answered my Flat Creek question. So, oh, one other question. When you said that the effort for full characterization for the alluvial aquifer was very complicated and a large effort, can you just give me like a 10 or 20 second idea on what you're talking about there? Like,
boy, I'll do my best. I'm not the
are you talking about, I guess, I'll just ask, are you talking about doing some sort of a salinity or dye injection and looking at everything, where it comes up, where it goes?
It might even, it could even include some like seismic type studies, because you have, I guess I didn't really share it in this presentation, but other ones I just, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, but I compared, like, for instance, say the West Bank, the aquifer over there. I said, well, just envision the braided pattern of the Snake River as it is now, but that's underground. And then you have different sediment deposits. And so you've got some preferential flow pathways, beneath the ground surface. And we see that just because there are some different flow rates for some of the high production wells over on the West Bank. But it's not it's not a homogeneous aquifer. So it's really challenging to identify what areas are higher flow than others.
And I guess maybe I'm asking the wrong question, because what I'm wondering about is, do we know where the upwellings are? Have those been mapped along the Snake, along Flat Creek? Because there'll be groundwater upwellings, and those would be particularly vulnerable areas for runoff.
Like on the West Bank, there's been a lot of work done with the groundwater surface to characterize it throughout the seasons. It's older, but I think it's still relevant today. The SEO did a study back in 2005 where they were looking at the groundwater level fluctuation. They also they looked at it back in the early 90s, Nelson Engineering did. And it's real consistent between 1992 and 2005. So we do have a pretty good idea of where shallow groundwater is. And
and what about for Fish Creek? going, heading through town and south?
So we've got the good data on the Fish Creek side, but the Flat Creek, it's not as well characterized or hasn't been studied as much.
Okay. I was just thinking in terms of mitigation.
Email, Travis and Aida, you have each other's contact. I want to make sure, and you have, yeah.
I'll put it in here.
I just want to make sure, is there anybody else? I know there are a lot of you on the clock, and I want to be sensitive to that, and I want to make sure Aida has access to all that she wants. We're lucky to have your expertise, Aida. So you have connection points if more comes up. And I just want to make sure from the DEQ, are you guys waiting to ask any questions? And you can't just, you can't, can you?
Well, I don't know. Can you hear us?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I just, are you waiting for anything? Are you in good shape?
I think we're in good shape. I mean, it's kind of hard for us to comment on what mitigation measures would help when we don't really know exactly what Jackson has already done. I'm a little bit familiar with the airport because they used to have an individual permit before they instituted their stormwater collection that they have now. But as far as the town itself, I'm not sure what other mitigation measures are already in place, but I don't know if you've considered looking at other towns that might have similar hydrology, like Missoula, Montana has a drinking water aquifer that's not that deep, and they had a lot of dry wells. They have a river running right through the middle of town, and they've done a lot with infiltration cells and other things in town. But I don't know, Jackson might already have some of those things.
Go ahead, Florin, if that's, Florin's got her hand up and making.
Yeah, I can speak to the mitigation measures, at least from the stormwater perspective. We do have multiple inline treatment units, and a lot of these are related to the surface water management plan that Sandy Buckstaff mentioned from 2001. So there are a lot of infrastructure capture and treat types of practices that actually we've been kind of picking away at it over the years, and a large portion of the town has at least some level of treatment. And what our next steps are with the stormwater management program, the goal is to kind of do more source reduction, prevent the pollution from being there in the first place, but also evaluating whether there might be other more effective things that we should be doing based on, again, the conversation about kind of baselining what do the pollutants really look like and what should we be targeting and those kinds of things. And we've gotten a lot of assistance from 319 funding through the state, and also in partnership with conservation districts. So I intend to fully continue to use those partners, as well as leveraging, the new injection of federal grant funding to kind of additionally help support these efforts. But it'll be a lot easier once we have that management program in place with more clear kind of initiatives and timelines for things.
Thanks, Lauren.
Right, as far as the green infrastructure, I think EPA has a lot of money available for that. And I don't know, usually developers, you have to make it some sort of incentive for them, but I don't know if you have a way of regulating and mandating that they have to incorporate that into their plans, but I think there is funding available for that through EPA.
Yes, and we are looking at that also in our stormwater management program. We have part of the scope is to give us 3 conceptual green infrastructure, like pilot application projects that we can do. And one of them, I wanted to make sure at least one was focusing on something that we could do along, linear, like along right-of-way corridors and things like that, so that it's not just relying on private property to implement. But we also are wanting to evaluate whether green infrastructure could exacerbate some of the problems with pollutant conveyance with our shallow groundwater and lots of mixing with the local creeks and things like that. Like, we certainly don't want to be introducing road pollution into the ground if it's not actually going to get uptaken and would potentially cause more problems for the creeks through the groundwater mixing.
I want to thank you all again, and thank you, Chris and Travis, for staying on. Even more good discussion. We will be in touch. We have dates, right, Ashley, for the next, let's see, do we have dates yet for the March? I think we have them all, the March meetings.
Yeah, I think we're aiming for the middle of the month. You all can look for an email from us shortly. Figured we'd finish up this week before we start planning the next one, but we will start that planning very soon.
Good. We are not doing meeting notes, but the recording of all meetings will be on the website, Kay.
Okay.
Okay. And we will have some big meeting notes in the form of a draft report before, too long. It will be a while, but that ultimately we will capture the group's sentiments and the data and all that in that final draft report, and then the final report. Okay. Well, with that, thanks for your time, and way to go, Travis and Chris and Matt and Megan, Ashley, you guys were all here, Christy, Florin, every meeting. And Aida, now that you know, I'm sure you'll be with us next time. So, or with all of the stakeholder groups. We appreciate you, and I think our meeting is concluded.